I commend this bill to the House.
Andrew Williams.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I rise on behalf of New Zealand First to speak to the Child Support Amendment Bill 2011. New Zealand First will support this bill going to the Social Services Select Committee, and we do support many aspects of this bill. However, we do have reservations about other aspects of it. The existing New Zealand Child Support Scheme helps to provide financial support for over 210,000 children, as we have heard from other speakers, and that scheme was established in 1992. As we all know, the scheme is needed when parents cannot mutually agree on the relative financial contributions to support their children. It is essential that the Child Support Scheme operates as effectively as possible in the best interests of the children involved. It states that this Child Support Amendment Bill is introduced with the intention of improving child support and making it fairer and more efficient. We certainly hope that that is the case. The bill in itself will revise the child support calculation formula to include a greater recognition of shared care and the income of both parents. The bill will also update the scheme to take account of other key factors, such as new estimates of expenditure for raising children today. The bill will improve the rules for payment, penalties and debt. Mr Speaker, much has changed in New Zealand society since 1992. These days, far more parents are both working, childcare arrangements are more extensive and varied, and a working week can be on any one of the 7 days of the week, perhaps considerably changed from the days of 1992 when this was first introduced. However, we New Zealand First do have some concerns, and these will need to be addressed at the Select Committee stage and during further readings in this House, such as the current levels of shared care of 40-60% split may vary as much as 28 to 72% split. This appears to be an opportunist lowering of these levels to decrease the financial input of the non-custodial parent. How has the 28% level been arrived at? We would like to know from the Minister and from the officials as to how that particular figure was determined. It is not even a third to a two-thirds share of the payments. In terms of the total income of both parents, if one parent earns more and is the custodial parent, does that directly affect the non-custodial parent's financial responsibility to these children? And if a non-custodial parent chooses to enter another relationship and have further children, does this lessen financial responsibility to their first family? And does this clause not disadvantage the custodial parent? Mr Speaker, we are also concerned that various analysts have looked at this bill and, for instance, I draw your attention to a recent article dated the 7th of May, which was published by a tax specialist, Mr Terry Bosher, and I apologise, Mr Bosher, if I've mispronounced his name, but he states, and I'll just quote Mr Bosher, "Child support payments are collected and distributed by the IRD, usually on a monthly basis. The problem is that the penalties for late payment of child support are very onerous. An initial 10% and then a further 2% per month on the outstanding amount, including penalties. According to the New Zealand Institute of Chartered Accountants, the effective annual rate of late payment penalties is an eye-watering 36.8% in the first year of non-payment. It's therefore quite easy to quickly run up large arrears through non-payment, as it seems to have happened with a number of cases, many cases on this scheme." Mr Speaker, Mr Bosher goes on to include a graph showing the top 10 largest debtors owing to the child support scheme. Looking at this graph, where all of these 10 top largest debtors started off with debts in the order of $25,000 to $50,000, their debts with the penalties and all the other fees that have been charged to them have gone up to between $550,000 up to $1.050 million, over $1 million on an original debt in the order of $25,000 to $50,000. Mr Bosher comments, as can be seen, the actual amount of child support owed by the 10 largest debtors is maybe not even 5% of the total owed. The rest is in penalties. He further says that at 30th of June 2009, total child support outstanding was $1.56 billion, including over $1 billion of unpaid penalties. Over $1 billion of unpaid penalties. The IRD has so little confidence that it will collect these outstanding penalties that its bad debt provisions in respect of penalties were more than 99%. So this government is allowing the IRD to continue with over $1 billion of debts against these child support schemes, with the prospects of 99% of them not being recoverable. Mr. Speaker, this therefore does cast a doubt over aspects of the scheme. It does mean that perhaps the figures do need to be recalculated. Perhaps the percentages are not necessarily correct and true as to what they should be in the end. Perhaps the debt levels and the penalties are too great and are too great a disincentive to try and get the funds back. Perhaps it's a little bit like the student loan scheme, Mr. Speaker, where basically so much is being racked up and so much is unrecoverable by this government that perhaps they are living in a false promise and a false hope of recovering much of this money. Perhaps it has to get back to the basics, and we have to make it fair and equitable for people to be able to pay off what is owing on these debts, rather than having fictitious amounts sitting there on the books which the New Zealand government has no opportunity to recover. Mr. Speaker, this also has in the past had the opportunity and had the effect of driving people offshore to run away from their debts, in particular to go to Australia and other places and further afield to get away from their child maintenance debts. Again, a little bit like the student loan scheme, we seem to be very good in this country of sending people offshore, exporting our people who basically cannot afford to maintain their payments. Perhaps we have to be a bit more creative, Mr. Speaker. Perhaps when this goes to the Select Committee, this has to be investigated further. Perhaps there has to be more consideration given to a real solution to this problem and coming up with some solutions to make it more affordable, more easily obtainable by those who are due these monies to actually get on top of the situation they're in. It was very sad, Mr. Speaker, that in recent weeks, I understand from the news media that one individual in Australia took his own life as a result of being hounded for his child payment debts in Australia for debts he was owing in New Zealand, and simply could not face the situation. It is very sad when it gets to that situation, and certainly I hope that the Social Services Select Committee will look at this closely, because we do want a fair and equitable scheme for all. So, Mr. Speaker, New Zealand First will support this going through to the Social Services Select Committee, but we will be certainly asking many questions in respect of it.
Mr. Speaker, I call the